everyone. Welcome to The Path of Me. I'm your host, Wendy Hutchinson, and my guest today is an amazing woman. Her name is Jill Tucker. She is a professional counselor and co-founder of Wondering Heart and Truth Tribe. And she also supervises LPC interns to help them with their clinical licensure. So welcome, Jill. Thank you.
Thank you
For being here. I'm excited to have you. So I've known you through the Yoga One Studios. That's where we met. And I would love to find out your background and what got you interested in your passion, finding your passion, what helped you find your passion in working with adolescents and teens.
Yeah, so people always ask me how I got into counseling, and for a long time I didn't really know the answer. And then I think just over the years, kind of doing my own personal work, I have kind of figured it out.
Yeah.
I knew I wanted to be in some type of helping profession, I think since high school.
Wow.
And even before that, I wanted to help animals, and then it became more about people helping other people. But let's see, okay, it's hard to conceptualize in my head at least, but when I was 5, I remember that we got a phone call that my grandmother was sick. And I remember my dad leaving and driving to Florida. At the time we lived in Louisiana, and that my Nana was sick. And that's what I knew as a 5-year-old. It was very little. But then all I knew was she was okay. And so I just assumed she was sick and got better. Then when I was 15, I found out that the real reason that he left is she was sick, but it was mental health related, and she had actually attempted suicide. And so about the time I learned that about my grandmother and started to learn more about her mental health history, we had moved. So the short story of me moving is I was born in New Orleans. And when I was 2, we moved to Kingwood, Texas. When I was 5, we moved to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. When I was 9, we moved to Odessa, Texas, way out west. And when I was 15, we moved to Spring, outside of Houston. So at 15, that was the hardest move for me. I'm the youngest of 3 girls. My sisters were in college, so I didn't have them to move with. And that's the only time I had moved without them, And
that's so hard.
Oh my God.
Especially in high school.
It was really, really, really hard for me. Odessa was the longest I had lived in one place. So it felt like home,
You had some roots there, friends.
Mm-hmm.
And as a teen, that's so important. I also moved in the middle of my junior year of high school.
Did you? Oh my gosh, so you totally get it.
I totally get it. It was so hard, and I had moved twice, going into 8th grade, and then once going in the middle of my junior year of high school. Those are such good times in your social development. That was rough.
It was
relate to you.
It was not a fun time in my life. I really struggled, Odessa is a pretty, it's 100,000 people there, but the community itself is pretty tight knit. And so wherever you go to church is your people, wherever you go to school, those are your people.
Right.
So I felt super connected there. And, at that age, I think peer relationships are so important. And
you feel so alone and vulnerable.
Yeah.
You go to school and you have to eat by yourself. You don't know a single person. That was the worst.
The first day of school, Wendy, I walked into the cafeteria and I saw a girl who I had met at new student orientation, and she waves me down, and she was just a really fun, happy-go-lucky kind of person. And I went and sat with her and I just lost it. I just cried in the middle of the cafeteria because it was the worst. I still tear up thinking about it.
I know.
It was awful.
It's so hard. So
Mhm.
those
So,
experiences shape you though and make you stronger, but at the time it's awful.
oh, most certainly. Yeah, my mom always says that it made us adaptable.
I like how moms always have some phrase to make it like, it was really not a big deal. It was good for you, actually.
Yes, everything was good. Yeah. So, the short story, I guess, is that move was really hard. I think I was really struggling. I remember having headaches every day. My stomach hurt every morning. And what I know now is that was probably anxiety, and I probably was depressed. I cried probably way more than was quote unquote normal for what was actually going on. And I just don't think, I mean, I think everyone knew, yeah, moving's hard, but I don't think they knew the extent of it because I was a closed off adolescent, right? So I think I wish now that someone had seen it for what it was and asked maybe different questions of me.
Sure.
And I think, becoming a therapist and specializing in adolescents, I just wanted to make sure they had a voice.
I love that.
Because I wish I had used mine more, but I wish people had asked the questions that would have led me to it. So I kind of want to hold that space for them and be the person that maybe asks the really big question for them. And right at that time also is when I found out about my grandmother's mental health history. So yeah, that's kind of why I do what I do, I think, in a nutshell.
Life has a way of guiding us, to exactly
totally.
where we need to be and finding our tribe, so to speak, or the population we're meant to serve. But definitely our childhood experiences really shape who we become from a emotional and compassionate perspective.
Right.
I think we're both healers in different ways.
Yeah.
We're like
and
showing
what's crazy, like how life kind of like just molds you. The yoga piece didn't come into my life till my late 20s, I guess. I was probably 29 when I started getting into yoga. And the only reason that happened is I was running and I was training for marathons. And during one of those trainings, I started having a lot of SI joint pain. And so I dropped out of a marathon 2 weeks before. I was super bummed about it. And a friend of mine was like, well, why don't you try yoga? Maybe it would help with, your hips, your back. And so I signed up for a 40-day yoga challenge at Big Yoga.
You mean the first thing you did was a 40-day yoga challenge?
Yeah, so I'm a Scorpio. I kind of am drawn to intensity.
Apparently, yes. Oh my gosh. Because 40 days is like, for people who don't know,
I had never done yoga in a yoga studio until my first day of 40 days.
Maybe you can explain what that is for people who don't know what the 40-day challenge is.
So the 40-day yoga challenge, basically, you sign on for 40 days of super intense stuff. So 5 days a week of in-studio yoga practices, 1 day a week on your own, or you can do that day also in studio. It's a daily meditation twice a day. There's a 3-day cleanse in there. You go to weekly meetings. It's a lot. It's super intense and so amazing.
You were like all in from day one. I'm so impressed.
That's kind of how, like I kind of, work hard, play hard, kind of go all in with things and create a little chaos in my life when there's not sometimes, but whatever.
Wow. So you must have learned a lot about yourself going through that, because it really brings up a lot of internal things as you're going through this practice.
Oh, absolutely. I think when I was in my yoga practice, I was like, the things my yoga teachers were saying to me, I was like, they're doing therapy and they don't even know it, because it just felt so profound and in alignment with, the work I was doing with my clients. And it just like clicked for me. And in the past, I was anti-yoga because I was like, no, I do hard things like run marathons, so I was very
like a real athlete.
Yeah. And so I was very, very humbled by by my experience with yoga because, oh my gosh, it's as hard as you can make it.
It's challenging. You know? It's challenging.
Yeah.
I was watching this interview with this Ultimate Fighter, a UFC commentator, Joe Rogan. He's a interview series. Super fit, mixed martial artist, like badass guy. And he was like, I took a yoga class and thought, it's not going to be a big deal. He goes, I've heard in places I didn't know existed in my body. Like, he's a total fan of yoga now because of all the benefits, you know, and
for sure. I remember every little tiny muscle fiber between my rib cage, like screaming at me. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know there were muscles. Yeah. The challenge for me in yoga is staying still.
Mentally and physically, probably.
Absolutely. Yeah. Staying in the pose, not leaving when it gets hard. Laying still in Shavasana at the very end. It's like you just get to lay there. You should be able to just relax and rest. And that is very challenging for me. You
have an active mind and body, it sounds like.
I do.
Did you go through yoga teacher training? Are you an instructor as well?
Yes. So I practiced yoga for several years before I was like, maybe I want to be a yoga teacher. But then I was kind of like, but for what? Like, I have a real job. And it's really funny. I was working as a therapist inside of a school. And I got a call from the receptionist and they said, you have a visitor. And I was like, I don't have any visitors. And they're like, well, someone's here to see you. And I was like, annoyed. Because I was like, this is how I function, like a little bitterness and resentment, and then I get humbled by things. So in walks Jessica, who is now my business partner, and she was just, doing some marketing because she was new to the private practice world of therapy in Houston. And I was like, wow, she's really cool. So I was ultimately very excited that she walked into my office, and we would just refer clients to each other and, meet up for coffee. And we were having coffee one day and I said, I'm really into yoga lately. And what's frustrating is I tell my clients to do it, but, they're not going to walk into a studio by themselves. I wish we could just do yoga with our clients.
Was she somebody who also participated in that as well? So there was kind of an alignment there. I know you were both therapists, but.
Yeah, she actually used to teach Pilates and spin classes at Define. And so in this conversation, we were like, we should just become yoga teachers and we should just teach our clients yoga.
That's so powerful.
That was just an idea. And then 2 years later, Truth Tribe was actually born. So we both became yoga teachers, within the same month. And I started my private practice. I left the nonprofit world I had been in. And it's like the start, it's just craziness. It all lined up.
It's a huge leap of faith, though, to leave a consistent paying job and then go to private practice.
Yeah, it was an exciting, terrifying time.
Sometimes those are the moments where you have to jump and just know the parachute's going to open, even though you have no clue and you're terrified of what the outcome's going to be.
I know. I kept telling my husband, I was like, you realize I might make $0, right? Like I could make $0 this month.
Were you waiting for him to talk you out of it? It sounds like he supported you through the whole process.
He supports me. I mean, he's amazing. Like I'll be like, hey, I want to do yoga teacher training and start a private practice and blah, blah, blah.
All in the same month.
He thinks I'm Superwoman is the problem.
Well, because you are. It sounds like
he thinks I can do anything.
Tell us a little bit about Truth Tribe. What's that about?
So Truth Tribe is, it's group therapy, technically speaking, but it's different than your traditional group therapy because it's all, right now we have a high school and middle school groups running, and it's basically a group of, 5 to 8 girls, and it's a 2-hour block, and we do about 45 minutes of yoga, and we have group process afterwards.
Awesome. Do you go into the school for that, or do they come to your?
We don't. They come to us.
Okay.
We've kind of played around with the idea of taking it to schools. We just don't have the manpower right now.
Right.
And life and babies and things
Yeah.
like that.
You
So
got a couple things going on.
just a little bit.
A beautiful baby girl named Aspen. That
Yes, she's the best. She's so cute.
She's so cute.
Yeah. So Truth Tribe. We actually just celebrated our 3rd year of running Truth Tribe groups. And
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's my absolute favorite thing to do.
Is it your passion project?
Totally. And I love it. Yeah.
So are girls in this for a year and then they graduate out? How does your program work?
So we asked them to commit to a cohort, and basically what that means is we've divided it up so it kind of goes with a school calendar. So this cohort we're in right now, this tribe, started at the beginning of October and will end December 13th. So it's 10 weeks this time, and we asked them to commit to that 10 weeks and to show up that 10 weeks as a tribe. And they get to name their tribe, which is fun. And then if they want to join the next tribe, they can. So we've had girls that have gone, they've done 5 tribes in a row.
That's awesome.
And then sometimes it just doesn't work with their schedule again. So they do one and they're, feel complete.
But they also are building a community.
Oh, totally.
Because there's a lot that happens when you have that consistent interaction with a group. You have vulnerability and the processing community with the yoga. So it sounds like it's a really powerful thing that you've created.
It's really awesome to watch them all connect. Like this tribe specifically, the first group, we figured out that all of the girls had moved and all of them were hating where they are. And it was just like, oh my gosh, the ways they were connecting about what had recently transpired in their lives was really amazing.
It's incredible sometimes how what seems like random circumstance brings together all the people that need to actually be together at one time.
Well, think about me and you.
I know.
At an entrepreneurs meeting at Big Yoga.
Yeah. And I don't even go to entrepreneur, or not entrepreneur meetings, but networking typically. Like I get business through referrals. So I literally go to no networking. I go to like one networking event.
That's so funny. Yeah.
Oh, it was so random.
I know.
But not, because here we are. But I'm really excited about your work. What is what's the mission statement for Truth Tribe, or your goal that you're trying to accomplish with these young women?
Well, it's something that we're kind of like playing with right now, so it's interesting that you ask. But I would say it's really to empower them, to help them find their voice, and to create connection. What we see a lot of is that they are connected outside of Truth Tribe, and not necessarily in ways that they can be their most authentic, most vulnerable selves. So we're providing a space for them to be able to do that and to dig deep and really look inward, and create themselves in a way that feels the best, right? Because I think in the outside world, it's like they're molding themselves to be how they think they should be by comparison. And
Absolutely.
in group, we're asking them not to do that.
Yeah,
We're
it's
saying
almost
no.
like having to relearn and connect to who they are authentically.
Yeah.
Because society really encourages us to wear all these masks and be all these things that don't align with us at all.
Mm-hmm.
If you branch out and you are your individual self, a lot of times you don't get supported or encouraged to do that. You get criticized or judged. And so people learn at an early age to put the mask on because it's...
Yeah, I mean, I totally did for a long time.
We all did, especially as teens and young adults. You know, as you get older, I think you get closer into more alignment with who you are, hopefully, at some point.
Oh my gosh. If I just think about like my 15-year-old self compared to my current self, like it's the older I get, the less I care about what everyone else thinks. And it's so freeing.
It's so much easier to actually just show up as yourself authentically.
Yeah.
Not really care what other people think.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
it feels much better.
Oh my gosh. And it's also empowering to be standing in your truth and alignment and pursuing what actually speaks to you instead of what's expected of you or is expected of you. You know, it's really powerful. So I honor the work you're doing in
Thank you.
A safe environment for them to be their authentic selves and know that that is where they shine.
Yeah. And, you know, they can come in and get real superficial and we're like, whatever. Okay,
we're going to call you on that bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, you know, we get creative about how to get them, you know, to dig deep. Like yesterday we did a meditation kind of about their inner child and what they were thinking and feeling and where they were and kind of what that inner child needed, because it's still what they currently need.
Exactly. And a lot of times it takes them right back to a trauma or a point of vulnerability that they've carried and is shaping who they are right now. I did a meditation. I was thinking right before you said that about a meditation I did, and I went back to, you know, when I was 13. It's interesting, if you ask them to go back to a point where they were super vulnerable, that they'll go back to the inception of some really deep trauma, pain, typically. And the meditation was to comfort that aspect of yourself. What would you say to her now?
Yeah.
And it was very powerful.
That's pretty much what we did last night. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
You're like, great minds think alike.
I think so.
And, you know, it was really cool to see them get raw and vulnerable and expressive about it. And, you know, every group is so different and they all come in with different vulnerabilities, different kinds of trauma, different personalities, you know, the girls who will just share anything and the girls who are more closed and guarded. We want to really hold space for all of them and make sure they all have an opportunity to speak and use their voice and share. And they all did that last night, and it's just really beautiful. It's really awesome.
Incredible unfolding from the beginning to the end.
Yes.
And who they are. The growth must be exponential.
Yeah.
The process. So that must be really rewarding for you.
It is. And it's also really rewarding to see their connection by the end. Because, you know, they come in strangers to each other. And these girls connected really quickly, this specific tribe. And sometimes it takes longer. This one, it's felt a little easier. But I also think that we're kind of, you know, getting better at facilitating these groups and helping them connect. But I think by the end of this one, they're going to be such a tight-knit group that they're going to have that bond forever.
I know, that's so awesome. That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I know you also do private practice. You're in practice as well. So maybe you can, you know, tell me a little bit about how you found this niche, because I know you work with a very specific demographic, and what spoke to you about that? What drew you to this?
Yeah, I think
counseling.
So when I finished when I was in graduate school, I knew I was interested in working with children and adolescents. So I remember at one point I had to choose between taking a substance abuse class or taking a child and adolescent class. And I chose the child and adolescent class. And the crazy thing about that is if you're working with adolescents, you're probably also going to end up dealing with some substance abuse issues. But I didn't have the option of taking both. So I also did a practicum during my master's program with communities and schools at Reagan High School in the Heights, which is now Heights High School, I realized recently. And so I was working with a lot of at-risk youth. And I loved the kids so much. And so I knew that I wanted to keep working with at least the adolescent population. So when I graduated, I went and worked at the Samaritan Center in Clear Lake, and that was to accrue hours towards licensure. And so becoming an LPC is kind of a longer process than you might think.
How many hours were required for you to?
You have to have so you have to get your master's, then you have to find a job, which is really hard to do because your license is an LPC intern. So people still think you don't know anything because of the word intern.
Right.
And the reality is, like, you've completed a master's program. You just have a good label. So then you have to have a board-approved supervisor, and you have to get 3,000 hours, but 1,500 of those have to be face-to-face client contact hours.
1,500 hours.
And if you think about it, when you're a therapist, you don't see 40 clients a week.
Right.
You know, like right now, I'm working 2 days a week, and I see maybe 10 clients a week. So I remember as an intern, I was trying to get 15 clients a week, and that's hard to do when you're an LPC intern, you know, working for...
Unless you're with a huge practice and they're just overflowing and over...
Yeah. And they just couldn't feed me. So it took me 2.5 years to get licensed. And in that time, I didn't put any restrictions on the types of clients I would see because I just wanted the experience.
Sure.
And pretty much everyone else I worked with would only see 18 and up. So I got like every adolescent in the building.
That's fantastic.
And I loved it. And it's really interesting because I've kind of evolved, I think, as a therapist, but I hated working with parents. I hated it. And I think part of it is...
And unfortunately.
Yeah, and you have to, I think, to be really effective. But I was 25. What did I know about parenting?
Right.
I was, you know, so I think I was just insecure maybe about working with the parents. And now, you know, now I have a 7-month-old and I'm only working 2 days a week. I'm adding a 3rd day soon. I've just kind of had this gradual reentry. But what's been challenging for me is figuring out scheduling. Because, like, I want to go home and put my baby to bed, you know?
Yes.
And so I used to work a lot of really late hours, and my hours were more like 2 to 8 p.m., you know? And so now what I'm doing is working a lot more with the parents. And some of the interns that I've supervised see some of the adolescents, and we can collaborate for their care, which I think is the most effective way of really doing things anyway, is to make sure the whole family is involved. And so it's really cool that we can do that here with these, you know, LPC interns that I'm supervising and that I trust. And so it's kind of like, you know,
That's so awesome. It's a win-win, it sounds like.
It is, yeah. And the parents have a little more flexibility to come and see me earlier in the day. And, you know, the adolescents are seeing these amazing therapists that
in the late afternoon
and have afternoon availability. So kind of a win-win. And I'm still doing Truth Tribe, so I get my real adolescent fix there, because I would miss it if I was totally out of the loop with adolescents.
Tell me about Wandering Heart. What is that about?
So it's interesting. Truth Tribe, Jessica and I created together, and that's, you know, the yoga group therapy. And then she was supervising, she's an LMFT, so licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm an LPC, licensed professional counselor. So she was supervising an LMFT, and I was supervising LPCs, interns. And I think it was Jessica had her second baby. And so we asked one of our interns, one of my supervisees, if she would co-facilitate Truth Tribe with me. And she said yes. We were like, great. And because we always like to have two therapists in group. It's just always kind of best practice if you can do that. And then we needed someone to see a teenager. And so we asked her if she would do that, and she did. So she ended up kind of like working for us without us really intending for that to happen.
Accidentally.
And then we were like, well, we have these other people we're supervising, so like we really know who they are and like what kind of work they're doing. So we asked all of them if they would be interested in seeing clients for us, because at the time we were both so busy, and then Jessica had her baby and so took some time off. And
right.
So we realized, like, so there's Truth Tribe, which is really these yoga empowerment groups for teenagers. Mm-hmm. And then there's the individual and family therapy, which is a little bit separate. And also, you know, the supervision that we were doing for people working towards licensure, we're like, what does that all fall under? That's not Truth Tribe. So Truth Tribe was born first, but then Wondering Heart is technically the parent.
It's kind of the umbrella.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of, you know, evolving and changing, and it's been really cool, because we did not think that, we just thought, okay, we're just going to do these yoga therapy groups, and then things keep happening.
Right.
And then about a year and a month or two ago, my business partner Jessica bought this house that is now called Heights Haven, where we office, and we have a back house where we do Truth Tribe.
Oh, that's awesome. What a great setup for you.
It's really just been a really wild ride, you know.
Congratulations.
All of it has kind of happened.
Yeah, it's amazing, I think, when you are in alignment with who you are authentically and your purpose. Mm-hmm. It's almost like magic just starts happening. You meet the right person, you get the right opportunity. Somehow clients start finding you from the most random and crazy circumstances. It's almost like the universe conspires for you when you really step into your power and align with your truth.
Yes, I agree. It feels like it's just happened. The reality is we've put a lot of work into everything.
Absolutely.
It's felt relatively easy, which I wouldn't have expected. You know, looking back, it's like, wow, we did a lot really quickly.
It's only been 3 years, so think about that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the day I started my private practice, Jessica was like, let's start Truth Tribe. And I'm like, no, I'm not ready. And it's great because we're so similar, yet we're so different. So she pushes me, you know, when I'm like too afraid, she can push me to keep moving forward. And I can like reel her in when she's going too far. You know, it's a really nice balance.
That's a great partnership, actually. It sounds like it
really is
for you both.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
I have a question for you. I know, you know, when you're in the profession or practice of helping others, you become so impactful because of your history, the things you've gone through. Obviously, you have your education to draw on, but I think there's also a piece of personal life experience that every therapist brings to the table. So I'm curious, what were some of the pivotal things that shaped you in your life and got you to this place?
Oh my gosh, so many things, I think. I think moving a lot was one of those things. You know, I felt very insecure and anxious, I think, as an adolescent, and I didn't have a name for that at the time. I didn't know that was anxiety or insecurity. And then in college, you know, I felt more comfortable in my own skin. You know, popularity didn't matter. Everyone was the new kid, so that was great. But I was still more reserved and hung back a little bit. Like my parents, if they see me now do public speaking, they're like, who is this kid? You know? But, you know, I've grown a lot and changed a lot. But towards the end of college, it was my senior year. So I was, 22. And I went through a breakup with someone I had been with for a long time, like since high school. And I was applying for grad school all at the same time.
That's a lot.
And yeah, I mean, I remember I lost like 13 pounds in a month.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't really, I didn't have 13 pounds really to lose. I remember not being able to sleep. And just eating just didn't feel good, and if you know me, like I love food. I'm always
You're
hungry.
just kind of in a really dark place, it sounds like.
It was a really tough spot. And the simplest things would make me anxious. And I didn't have a name for it. I didn't know what it was. And the kind of, I think kind of breaking point for me was not, it's weird to me that it's like this memory and this light bulb moment, because to everyone else, it probably wouldn't be. But to me, it was. My friends and I were going out one night, and my roommate's boyfriend was waiting in the truck for all of us to go get in it. And I couldn't find my wallet. Like, no big deal, right? We found the wallet, by the way, got in the truck and went wherever we were going. And even once we got there, my roommate was like, "Why are you still freaking out? You found your wallet." And I was like, "I don't know." And it was that underlying anxiety. I just couldn't shake it. And so after that, I went to the student health center and cried my eyes out to some poor doctor that asked the right questions. I said, "I'm really struggling. I'm sad. I can't eat." And so they put me on an antidepressant. And I thought, oh, I'm doing the right thing. I'm taking care of myself. And so now I'll tell my parents what's going on. And so I called my parents and I told my dad what was going on and that I had gotten on medication, so I was fine. And he said, "Well, if you're going to do that, I'm glad you did it. And if you're going to do that, I want you to go to therapy too." And I was like, okay, I guess. I mean, I do want to do this for a living. I mean, I was applying to grad school to be a therapist. And I had never been to therapy, Wendy. So I went to therapy, and it was great. I mean, and what's interesting is I may have only gone like 4 to 6 times. That's all I went. And this woman has probably no idea that she said the thing to me that I needed to hear, that just like flipped the switch for me. And all she said was like, "Well, no wonder you feel this way."
She just validated your feelings. She actually saw you.
Yeah.
Which I think is really powerful, because I think when people are suffering, there is such a tendency to withdraw and be very alone, suffering, reach out for help. And so, like you said earlier, people really aren't aware of the depth of the suffering you're going through. So if there's a listener out there and you are really deep, there's help available for you. If you don't have somebody in your family to talk to or a friend to talk to, there are crisis hotlines you can call. There are resources available if you have insurance. You can typically see a therapist for a copay, which is a fraction of the cost of the whole session. So I know it's so tempting when you're in the dark just to stay home with the blinds closed and the covers. It's over you, but both Jill and I have participated in therapy, and it's very, very pivotal in our journeys. So that
was my first experience with it. And then in my late 20s, I started feeling the same stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, so I'm gonna beat this before it really gets ramped up. And so I, called my insurance and called a couple of therapists, and one of them was really nice on the phone. So I was like, "I'll pick you." And I mean, I really just picked her from a list, and I saw her for years.
Another thing that's important is to find somebody who resonates with you, because it's kind of like trying on shoes. They're all size, but not every shoe is going to be the perfect fit. So you really have to kind of go with your gut feeling. If you do have a connection with that therapist, do you feel?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you don't feel connected or comfortable, you're not going to be as vulnerable as you need to be.
Right.
And they aren't, I mean, you're not going to get what you need.
Exactly.
Like this woman that I went to is who I would go back to if anything else came up.
Right.
And I've done that, you know,
Right.
in my adult life, if things kind of are blowing up or I'm just having trouble with a situation or something, she's who I call. And I just go see her a few times because she already knows my whole story.
Yeah, you don't have to start from the beginning, which is nice, but it is worth it to do some research up front.
Yes.
So don't just grab onto the first person that comes along, you know, really make sure you feel comfortable and secure and you're in an environment where you feel safe sharing your story and being vulnerable, because that's when people can really authentically help you.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not the perfect therapist for everyone. I, you know, have my style and my way of doing things, and it's not going to connect with everyone, and that's okay. And so I like to tell my clients when they're coming to their first session, if at any point you feel like I'm not the best fit for you, let's have a conversation about it, because I want to help you get connected to the person that will make the most sense for you. It doesn't have to be me. You can't hurt my feelings about that. I want you to get what you need, you know, and different people need different things.
Mm-hmm. So you reaching out, I love that you actually listened to your father's advice, because most kids don't.
Well, he might not have given me a choice, but I mean, I guess you always have a choice, but yeah, he kind of said, this is what's going to happen. And so I did it. And I'm glad I did.
Right.
I'm really glad I did.
Right. Well, I really want to acknowledge the work you're doing, because there's such a need for young women to feel their truth and also shine their light.
Yeah.
I think adolescents become experts at really dimming their light because they don't want to attract too much attention or judgment. So they kind of, you know, they have all these beautiful gifts and talents, but they tend to kind of dim their light to stay with the pack, you know, and conform.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So it's awesome that you have this available. If people want to find you, how do they find you? Is it through your website or?
Yeah, you can.
What's the best way to reach you?
Best way to reach us, I have my personal private practice website, jilltuckertherapy.com. And we also have a website for Truth Tribe. It's mytruthtribe.com. Lots of information on there about our groups, about what Truth Tribe is all about the, you know, the other women we have seeing clients for us. And Wondering Heart's website will hopefully be launching by the end of the year. So it's still in process. Yeah.
Work in progress. That's awesome. Can it become, are there any requirements or restrictions to the type of?
To Truth Tribe specifically? So usually what happens, I think moms tend to be the ones seeking out, you know, resources for their kids, and that's not always the case. We have dads call too, but we usually talk to the mom or dad first and kind of get a big picture of what's going on, and that's usually just a phone call. And if it sounds like it might be a good fit, then we'll schedule a consultation where we have the girls come in and we just meet with them for probably 30 minutes and tell them about groups, see if they're really interested, let them ask us questions, and make sure that they're the right fit. So if we had someone who was in extreme crisis, you know, actively suicidal, those types of things, they aren't probably the best fit for the group right then, right? So we want to help them get connected to what they really need. And yeah, so it's kind of like they get to interview us and we're interviewing them.
Right. And you're located in the Heights in Houston, Texas.
Yes, we are. We're in the Heights, right at the corner of Shepherd and 18th. And it's been bumping over here lately. There's yoga studios and restaurants and ice cream shops popping up. So we're really excited we're over here.
Amazing. Yeah. Do you have any words of advice you can offer to, I'm going to ask two questions before we go. Okay. We're going to wind down. But the first one is for adolescents who are struggling. Is there something a tool you can offer them, some advice you can give them to help them with this, suffering?
Oh, such a big question.
That's kind of broad, but, maybe
Okay.
just a tip for someone who's tuning in that is experiencing a lot and they just really don't know.
So I would say I have two answers to that question. And one is tell yourself what you need to believe. And I think for me as a teenager, I wish I had known what a mantra was.
Yes.
I figured that out later in my adult life. And, a mantra is basically just a kind of a phrase you repeat to yourself over and over. And if you need to believe something different than the random thoughts that are flying around in your head or those recurring thoughts that are keeping you not feeling good, then replace it with something better. So for me, being a first-time mom, I'm always like, am I doing a good enough job? Am I doing this right? And so what I'm telling myself right now is I am enough. What I'm doing is enough.
That's huge.
I'm a good mom, because that's what I need to believe to continue to do a good job, right? And so for a teenager, it could be like, I am perfect just the way I am. And maybe that's what they need to believe, or maybe what they need to believe is this too shall pass. Because that's one thing that we know about emotions, right? Is that they always are changing. Like you don't get sad and stay sad for the rest of your life every moment.
They feel permanent at the time, but they're temporary.
Exactly. They ebb and flow. And so reminding yourself, like, this is temporary, this too shall pass. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, even if I don't know what it is, whatever it is, to kind of like play that tape over and over in your head, rather than the one that's all the yucky stuff that you don't want to sit in anymore. The other thing is to reach out, because you are not alone. I mean, oh my gosh, I think we all think at some point in our lives, like, no one knows the pain I'm in. And the reality is everyone does at some point. It may be a totally different story, but people can relate to your experience. And you don't have to sit alone in it.
Absolutely. Beautifully said. And the parents, I know you work a lot with parents, and I know my parenting journey, biggest things I had to learn was to release expectation and allow my children to be who they were born to be, and love them. Love them for what is presenting. Not loving out of fear. Loving out of fear looks like you're freaking out because they're not conforming to your agenda or your perspective of what you should be doing or how this should go or how this should look. But loving unconditionally, regardless of how they're showing up. Right? They will not be showing up all the time as their highest and best. I can guarantee you that.
Who is?
So do you have any words of wisdom for the parents,
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Another giant question. So I think a lot of times parents want to fix. And I want them to know they don't have to, that it's okay. So love them, absolutely, and validate their experience. So you don't have to agree with them to validate their experience. So if your kid comes to you and says, I hate school, everyone's terrible, to be like, oh, no, they're not, is very invalidating. And the reality is, no, everyone's probably not terrible. And to them, it feels like it. And so validating them would be saying something like, oh, yeah, it sounds like school's really hard for you right now. Yeah, that sounds really like a tough situation, and to be genuine about it and to really try to connect with them in that way. And also to love them and hold boundaries with them, because if you don't, I mean, you can literally like love your kids to death, They need boundaries, they need structure, they need to know what rules and expectations you have to live up to that standard. If there's no boundaries in place, they're going to keep going until someone, puts a brick wall in front of them.
They're going to keep pushing that envelope, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And they're experts at it.
Oh, they're so good at it.
You're so good.
So good. I've built a whole practice around kids that like to push the envelope.
Yeah. Jill, thank you so much for joining us today. You are a beautiful soul, and the work you're doing is going to impact so many. It's so powerful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having
Spend
me.
some time with me. I'd love to have people connect with you. I'll again put her website down below. And for all of you listening, thank you so much. Have a beautiful day and be kind to yourselves. I love you all.
Thanks, Wendy.
Bye.
Bye.